Hello, welcome to Miss Peepers Reading Corner. I'm Katrina, aka Miss Peepers. Let's talk about nonfiction. Today we're doing the Nonfiction November Tag. This tag was created by Julie at Bookish Travels, and I was tagged by Robert G., reader of books, 1 year ago. Robert, I'm so sorry. My end of year got away from me, but I'm here now. I did not forget, and we're doing the tag today. The first question is, what motivated you to pick up your first nonfiction book, and can you remember it? I cannot remember what my first nonfiction book was. It was so long ago. Of course, I read books in school, nonfiction and fiction, depending on what was assigned. My interpretation of this question is that it's asking what nonfiction book did you first pick up, like on your own accord. That's how I'm reading it anyway. And I can't remember that either, but I did peruse my shelves and I found what I think is the nonfiction book in my collection that I've had the longest. I'm going off of memory because I haven't been tracking my library forever. The book in question is Fiddler on the Subway by Jean Weingarten. And I read this, gosh, when did this book come out? This book was published in 2010, so of course I haven't had it any longer than that. I don't remember how quickly I jumped on this, but it was in paperback when I got it, so it must have been maybe 2011, 2012 is my guess. This is a collection of essays that were first published in the Washington Post by the author Jean Weingarten, who I don't know what he's up to these days. Probably he's retired would be my guess, but I'm not sure. But he was at least at the time a journalist with the Washington Post, and he wrote a number of articles on various topics and collected them in this book. The essay from the title, Fiddler on the Subway, is in reference to an experiment in which the famous violinist Joshua Bell played his violin as if he were a busker in the DC subway. And Weingarten wrote his observations on how people are so focused on their commutes, on their daily lives, that they can walk past something kind of amazing happening and not pay attention to it. I remember really enjoying it. Weingarten has won a couple of Pulitzer Prizes, and yeah, and he's a very good writer. Question 2, how do you choose your next nonfiction read? I haven't read a ton of nonfiction, and actually I would like to next year at some point tackle my nonfiction shelf, my unread nonfiction books, just to decide what I actually am going to read and what is no longer of interest anymore. But the way I choose my next nonfiction book, it depends entirely on what I am interested in. So a few ways that I use to decide if an author that I really like publishes a nonfiction book. Most recently, John Green's Everything's Tuberculosis is one that I picked up immediately because John Green wrote it. And it was less about the subject, more about the author. Although I ended up really liking that book. I made a video about it. I'll link to that. But I also choose things based on the topic. Primarily, I think probably a lot of people choose their nonfiction that way. It's a topic you're interested in for whatever reason, and so you find a book about it. Often nonfiction books are recommended to me by someone that I know, someone that I work with, or maybe I like watch a YouTube video and someone mentions it and it sounds interesting, so I get myself a copy. Again, I really need to go through the ones that I have and decide if I'm actually going to read them or not. So if you're interested in that journey whenever it happens next year, like and subscribe so you don't miss it. But that's primarily it. I don't specifically seek out nonfiction. I am in my reading more drawn to fiction in general, largely because for me, reading is an escape. And that doesn't necessarily mean that all of the books that I read are like light and fluffy. Some of them are and some of them are not, but more that I like to immerse myself in a fictional world a lot of the time. Question 3, do you take notes or annotate your nonfiction books? Typically I do if it's a book that I am trying to learn something specific from, if that makes sense. I never used to notate or annotate in any books. I would read them, I would move on. Like you can see, Fiddler on the Subway, there are no tabs in here, but more recently read books, and I'm going to talk about this in a future question, but like, yeah, this is a book I read more recently and I got tabs all over the place and I've written on the pages. Yeah, see, put a little post-it note in here and I've written on the pages, and sometimes I'll make notes in my journal if there's something I particularly want to remember, or maybe an exercise or a thought process, a question that I want to ponder later. I write all over nonfiction books. Unless I suspect that I'm not going to like it when I start reading it early on. If I think that I'm going to unhaul it, I won't write all over it. If I'm enjoying it at the start, and this says I've run into this, where I've started writing in a book and then I'm like, oh, I don't like this book. Dang it. Now I can't get rid of it because I've started writing in it. And I don't feel right donating a book or passing it on to someone with writing in it. That just doesn't feel right to me. Like the occasional note or like one or two words here and there is not a big deal, but like when I write in a book, I really get in there usually. So yeah, I do. That was a very long way of saying, yes, I do annotate and take notes on nonfiction books when I read them. Question 4, have you read a nonfiction book that has challenged your beliefs and assumptions? This is an interesting one, and I was having trouble with that question. The book that I came up with is this one, Quiet by Susan Cain. This book is about the experience of being introverted in a world that really prizes extroverted behaviors, particularly in countries like the United States, where like being bold and upfront, like we have a reputation with other countries of being loud and brash and always, speaking too loudly and getting in people's faces. We're not all like that, and Susan Cain delves into what that's like. What is introversion? What is extroversion? How to know if you're introverted or extroverted if you don't know, kind of that in-between state, that introversion and extroversion is a scale, not a binary. I mean, you might be very introverted like I am, or you might be very extroverted, or you might be somewhere in between, which I think a lot of people actually are. This book talks about how to approach the world and how to be true to yourself if you are in fact introverted, and in such a way that you can lean into your strengths in order to be more truly yourself. The reason I say this, that this challenged my beliefs and assumptions, and that might be a little bit of a strong phrase, because as I read this, I really saw myself like a lot. This book really gave me language to talk about what I need and how I exist in the world, that it's okay that I actually do need a lot of alone time. I need a lot of quiet time. It's that it's not that I don't like socializing, but rather that socializing drains my energy faster than it does other people's. And this book helped me start thinking about how I can change my life and change my routines, change what I agree to do, what social activities I agree to attend, in order to preserve my own energy, and in order to really, when I'm with people, I'm really with them. And when I spend time socializing with friends, with family, with colleagues, whatever it is, that I can really be present and there. And if I have a lot of socializing for a period, then I know I need to schedule downtime for myself. So this book, while it wasn't an overnight fix for me, this really helped me. It put me on the path to start thinking about the way that I interact with the world. And it also put me on the path of noticing how much, at work in particular, extroverted behaviors are rewarded. They are expected almost. And a lot of the advice of how to navigate in a corporate environment in particular, and how to network, all of it is, or most of it, is designed with an extroverted behavioral mindset. And so like, go to a networking event and don't leave until you've gotten 20 business cards. I realize we don't do business cards anymore, but you know what I mean. Don't leave until you talk to 20 people. That sounds like absolute hell to me. Not only would I hate doing that, if I did that, I would not be at my best once I got to person number 3 or 4, because now I'm talking to 20 strangers. Once you get past 1 or 2, they're not going to want to talk to me. They're not going to want to interact with me. Because I am not going to be happy, and I'm going to be behaving differently, and I'll be tired, I'll be grumpy. And so that's not a good approach for someone like me. That might be a great approach for you, viewer. If you thrive on interpersonal connection, if you love to meet people, if you love to talk to strangers, then that's great advice for you. It's not great advice for me. And so those kinds of things, I think, are really important to think about how you interact So anyway, this is a big tangent, but this is was for me personally, and I think for a lot of people, this book was a big deal when it was released. And I actually got a chance to even see Susan Cain speak at a conference once, which was pretty cool. And like, this book really kicked off for me a journey of self-awareness of how my brain is wired. And it took me down a number of pathways over the years so that now I understand myself, not just in terms of my introversion, but other things as well. Like, I understand myself a whole lot better because of this book and others like it, and other experiences as well. This is not like the one catalyst, but this was a big catalyst for me thinking about myself differently. I hope that you, whatever your book is, whether it's this book or another one, I hope that you have found or will find a book like that, or a movie or a TV show or a relationship with someone, like anything that sends you on that path that it's really rewarding. It's a lot of hard work, but it's really rewarding when you get to the end of it. For someone who doesn't read a whole lot of nonfiction, I have a lot to say about nonfiction, turns out. Question number 5, how do you feel about the intersection of storytelling and factual content in nonfiction? I love it. To me, there is nothing more boring than reading a nonfiction book that is just the facts, just facts and figures. One of the reasons, a big reason that I read is that I love stories. It's also why I watch television. It's why I watch movies. It's why I watch YouTube videos. Like, I love stories. And so that's why I tend honestly to gravitate towards fiction anyway. But nonfiction, good nonfiction books do have stories, and they have good stories. So I really appreciate that approach to getting information across because it sticks with you better. If you can connect it to a person, a real person, a character, a scenario that you might experience yourself at some point or might have experienced, that makes a huge difference in how much information you're actually going to retain. I remember, for example, that when I was in school, I always really hated history class. And it's because history class for me was very much like a list of dates, a list of names. Does anyone else have to memorize all of the explorers who made their way from Europe to North America and South America? I did. And like, I could not tell you what Magellan discovered because I cannot remember, but I remember his name. I don't remember what date he sailed. I once knew all of these things. All of this is to say, I once had to memorize all of these dates. And I'm like, okay, date, event, date, event, date, event. And all the events were one-liners. And I didn't get the story. I didn't really feel that connection to what was happening. And the thing is that as an adult, I realized that history is actually really interesting, or it can be if it's told to you in an interesting way. And it's not hard to tell history in an interesting way. But the way that our school system is designed, insert rant here, the whole purpose of our schooling system, at least when I was in school, I think it's probably not any better now, but so much of the purpose of schooling is to cram as many facts into a person's head so they can pass a standardized test, so they can go on to the next level of education and the next and the next, and then go to get a job. And it's a whole thing. And the information doesn't stay there as well. Storytelling is critical to making a nonfiction book a good one. Question number 6. Is there a topic you wish authors would explore? That's a really hard question to answer. Only because I'm certain that whatever I say, someone's going to be like, here's 7 books on that topic, which actually would be kind of great. So here we go. I would love to read a well-written, interesting storytelling type book about the ethics of generative AI and presenting it in a way that does not catastrophize, but also is very clear about both the upsides and the downsides of that technology. I made a video talking to ChatGPT about book banning. I'll link to that. And that really got me thinking about how much and how quickly AI has just permeated our society, permeated the way that we live. For example, I have smart home products in my home, speakers and lights and that kind of thing. And that's all fine and good. I recently got an upgrade saying we're gonna add our AI to this. And it asked me if I wanted to, and it gave me the option of yes or not now. Not yet. It didn't give me an option to say no. So I caved because I was sick of hitting the not now button. I know, that's what they wanted. And I don't think that AI is on the face of it a bad thing per se, but I do think there are pitfalls that we don't as a society talk about enough. Or if we do, it's happening in these tiny little bubbles. I was recently talking to someone who went to a technology conference and went to a lot of panels about AI and told me that there was only one panel on ethics and everything else, all of the other content was, this is amazing, how can we use it? And I think there's a time and a place for it. This is amazing, how can we use it? But also that should be balanced with, okay, what are the risks? What could go wrong? What should we be thinking about, especially for the average consumer? Yes, for the tech companies, the people who are actually building this stuff and using it to build other stuff. But for the average person who is sitting at their home computer trying to ban books or whatever you're trying to do, or looking on YouTube and or TikTok or Instagram or all the sites and having to zip past all of that like AI slop bullshit. I'm starting to see it on YouTube now. I hate it. I hate that AI slop. I'm not opposed to you using AI as long as you're clear you're using it. But the videos I mean, right? Like the not quite realistic cat videos where they're like riding a bicycle, like a human. Haha, isn't that cute? No, it's not. It's creepy. It's creepy. So I really want to, I would love to read about that and really love to see a measured, balanced discussion about that. So if you're aware of a book that does this and does it well, please hop in my comments and let me know, because I'm definitely interested in that. I'm sure someone's written about that. I'm sure someone has. Someone has to have, right? Right? Question 7, do you incorporate insights from nonfiction into your daily life? Yes, I do. It's bits and pieces here and there, and it depends on the insights. It depends on the nonfiction. Some things stick with me for a long time. Some things are more short term. For example, I mentioned everything's tuberculosis earlier. I see tuberculosis everywhere. Everywhere. And again, that was the storytelling that did that made those things stick in my head. And if it weren't for that episodic series of stories about the rise of tuberculosis and how it's affected society and how it's affected beauty standards and how the healthcare system has completely failed people in developing countries who maybe don't have the money for these treatments that are more expensive than they should be, that all of that, if that had not been told in such a powerful way, I would not be noticing these things everywhere. I would not think about that when a character in a movie makes a reference to consumption. I'm like, oh, that's tuberculosis. Or I see an Adirondack chair and I'm like, how those were created. Those were invented for TB patients. So that's a more of like a lighthearted, not the topic of tuberculosis, but the effect that it has on my life of seeing those things everywhere and drawing those connections. I also, in terms of my behavior and the things that I do, or the way that I approach my life, those things are also affected by things that I read in nonfiction. I think that's part of the point of certain nonfiction books. When I spoke about quiet earlier in the video, I mentioned that I think about socializing differently now, and I deliberately schedule rest days for myself, people-free days for myself when I have been socializing a lot or pushing myself in other ways. If I'm really busy and doing a lot of things, I am less likely to have energy to socialize on top of that or a lot of it. So to me, I've got different people in my social circles who require different levels of energy. And I want to be really careful how I talk about this because I am not saying, ugh, this friend is exhausting. If I'm thinking that, then that person's not my friend anymore. Like, let's be really honest, which is a change that I have made. That person becomes an acquaintance, someone that I see every once in a while, not someone I see regularly, because I can't do it. And I owe it to myself to surround myself with people who feed my energy as opposed to leech it. But I've got some friends that I can just like sit in silence and everything's fine and no one feels any pressure to say anything before they're ready or have something to say. I've got other friends who like, you have to talk all the time or you have to keep activities going, and that is fine. I just need to be prepared for that mentally. I think I'm going down a rabbit hole. Question number 8. Choose just one book from your nonfiction collection to highlight. I've talked about this book on this channel before. I showed you the side with all of the tabs. I'm going to talk about it again. November is actually a really good time to talk about this book, Burnout by Amelia Nagoski and Emily Nagoski. And I highlight this one because we're going into holiday season, and it is really easy to burn yourself out if you are not careful. End of year is busy for many people. Busy at work because you're getting to the end of the year, the end of the quarter, busy at home because you're planning for holidays. Maybe you're visiting relatives or hosting or going to different parties or baking or cooking or whatever it is that you're doing, finding and wrapping gifts, putting up decorations. And of course, there are multiple holidays that people celebrate this time of year that require different levels of energy for those things. Burnout approaches the idea of how we're spending our energy and how easy it is to overexert yourself without even really realizing it. The target audience of this book is women in Western society in particular. So it is pretty narrow in scope, but what I will say is that a lot of what's in here is applicable to any gender, to multiple cultures. I, of course, can't speak for every culture. I cannot speak for every gender, but I think most people can probably find some good stuff in here. If you're willing to just accept that in general, the discussion is towards women. We all have our different intersecting identities that affect the way that society views us and the way that we view our role in society. Women in patriarchal society, which is most of the world, unfortunately, are expected to be supporters, caretakers, givers, helpers. Even if you're surrounded by really progressive people, even if you're surrounded by feminists, there are so many societal messages that are really ingrained in all of us that many of us don't question or don't even realize are there to question. And we can put ourselves in these boxes and create expectations for ourselves or internalize expectations directed at us that are not realistic for any one human. So there are a few things that I really love about this book and that are the reason that I have marked up so much of it, and I've written in it, and I've put excerpts from this and things in my journal to think about further, to think about with my own personal experience. I've journaled about aspects of this, my responses to it, my thought process, my experience. So the authors talk about gender roles. They also, and expectations. They talk about things that affect us that are outside of our control. And they provide actions that you can take to turn things around for yourself. And I'd really like to focus particularly on that. You know, it's not always something you can control. One thing that shows up in so many like personal development books or books that are labeled as self-help is that they really focus on the individual being both responsible and to blame for anything that's going on in their lives. And this book does not like free you from obligation, free you from responsibility, because there are some things that we do to ourselves. There are some things that we can change to make our own lives better. But then there are also things that are broader, that are systemic, that are societal, that we can't control, that we can't shut down by ourselves. We can chip away at it, but we can't necessarily fix it. I can't decide that next year I'm going to get rid of the patriarchy personally, just me, by myself. I can't do that. But I can take actions to improve the world around me in small ways. Sometimes in big ways, but in small ways. I can make sure that I'm voting for the right people. I can use this platform to talk about books. I can educate myself. I can educate others. I can talk about banned books, and you better bet I'm going to talk about banned books every October until the book banning stops or this channel no longer exists. That's what we're doing. But I can do those things, and that is maybe not going to solve the whole problem, but it's going to help. It's going to get the message out. It's going to make other people think. It's going to make other people consider taking action. And so little by little, we make small changes that improve the world around us. So the Nagoski sisters acknowledge that most of us are not in a position to make big changes like that. And that's okay. But that doesn't mean those big changes don't affect us. That doesn't mean that societal beauty standards, when you don't meet them, which basically no one does, by the way. But if you don't meet societal beauty standards, you can't change societal beauty standards, but you can change how you think about yourself. And by the way, you can remember that many societal beauty standards, at least in the West, were caused by the way that people's bodies changed as a result of tuberculosis. So, hey, we're back to tuberculosis. The point is, that this book helps you think about how not everything is up to you. And that is like the biggest cause of burnout, I think, in women in particular. This is non-scientific. This is my personal opinion, that we take on so much. We think everything is our responsibility. And we've been socialized to think everything is our responsibility. This book, as well as a couple of others, and also some really good creators as well. I'd like to call out She's a Page Turner, who is fantastic and talks about mental load, particularly in heterosexual marriages with kids, but that women take on the mental load. I don't have children. I am married to a man. I take on the mental load. He and I have had conversations about this. Where I have said, I realize I'm doing this. Let's talk about what that means, why it's happening, and how it's not your fault, but you can be part of the solution. And because it's not his fault, but he can be part of the solution. And it's not my fault, and I can be part of the solution. And so this is the kind of conversation that you can have as a result of books like this. That you're thinking about how you're wired and what you're doing. And that can be the power of a really good nonfiction book. Prompt number 9 is to tag people, which I will do in the description below. If I don't tag you, it's not personal. And if you're watching this and you wish I had, well, consider yourself tagged. I would love for you to do this tag. I also will not take it personally if everyone I tag takes a year to do this video, as I did. Again, Robert, I'm so sorry. I really did get the tag and I was gonna do it. I really was. Last year, I did not pay attention to the lessons in this book about not burning myself out, and I burned myself out. This year, we're doing different things. And if you don't have a channel but just want to pop into the comments and answer any or all of these questions, I'd love your thoughts. Please share. And either way, whatever you do, please keep reading. Please keep reading nonfiction, fiction, whatever it is, read it, and I will see you in the next one.